you care about the Constitution so much, why the did you vote for a guy that literally said he wants to terminate all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution? The only way that we have a chance at convincing them and being able to change things is through democracy. I promise you, if you try to fight against the government, you're not going to win.
I have plenty of shotguns. I'm quite good with a shotgun, I feel like. And not just me individually, but people are very good and people would be trained. They'd be able to shoot down those kamikaze-style drones. I more wanted to do a talk about the Second Amendment and what you think about it, because if it is a debate, I know I would get cooked. But what's your opinion on it, and if it should be restricted at all?
The Second Amendment. So obviously there are things within the Second Amendment to like say one, it's well regulated, right? So like we can put all regulations. I don't think that's incompatible with the Second Amendment.
I guess more of what I'm asking is, like, what regulations do you think should be on, and do you think like Democrats are handling it well in like on the state issue?
Yeah, I generally I don't have fully fleshed out views when it comes to gun control, but I typically err on the side of restricting guns more, probably. For standard
Okay,
guns.
so
And
can I
like
just use my
having more restrictions. So like common sense gun control legislation I'm in support of, which commonly includes like red flag laws, bans on like high capacity magazines and automatic weapons and stuff like that. Bump stocks.
okay.
I disagree with a lot of those types of things.
So some of those ones made sense to me, but the high capacity magazines I disagree with, because the reason why I think the Second Amendment should be a thing is to stop a tyrannical people. So, and to make sure that people have, to make sure that people have power
Against the government?
Yeah, if the government,
the government has missiles and drones.
I don't think so. I think you
The
underestimate
government would
American
clear
people's
us,
will.
dude. They could illness. Oh, dude, we would get destroyed,
No,
dude.
we would outnumber them.
Well, I mean, the only way we
50 to
would win
1.
is if we could get people within the government to be on our side. But if we're actually fighting against the government, we're fucked, dude. I'm serious.
I
Like
disagree. I
your
think you
only
truly
shot is not the
underestimate.
guns. Your only shot is convincing the people within the military to help us,
That would definitely go a long way, and I think that would
which
be
does
a
not
huge
require
strategy.
guns.
But if you look at like countries that have became tyrannical, typically they always take away the right to bear arms if they ever had it in the first place. And if it wasn't a big deal to have guns, why would they take it away in the first place?
If it was, it is a big deal. It is a big deal to ban guns because it saves lives.
No, I'm saying for the tyrannical governments that did take away guns, why would have they taken away guns?
But there aren't there are some governments that are not tyrannical that have taken away guns as well.
Yeah,
why are you attributing it to only be tyrannical because some tyrannical governments have done it? Some tyrannical governments have had markets. That doesn't make markets bad. Some tyrannical governments were governments. That doesn't make all governments bad. We've got to use a little bit more critical thought.
And my guess, or my response to that would be, they typically did it right before they did atrocious acts, and you could say it's all a coincidence. But also, too, a lot of the countries that have took away the Second Amendment, and I'm sure you're going to say, like Australia, that's an example of a government that took away guns.
They don't have the Second Amendment.
Sorry, you know what I meant to say, though. You know, like,
yeah,
the premise of what I was trying to say. I just believe, and if the government did, there is a scenario where it all turns out good. But one, why would you want to risk that? And two, I believe a lot of countries haven't had enough time to develop yet, and still might turn. I know a lot of people like to say how a lot of governments haven't turned, or a lot of governments that have took away the right to bear arms haven't turned tyrannical yet, like Australia or other countries.
I understand.
I would say
we're already tyrannical. Like we already exist within tyrannical government. I understand your point. Like what you're not understanding is that the only way that we have a chance at convincing them and being able to change things is through democracy, is through changing things, right? By like convincing people. I promise you, if you try to fight against the government, you're not going to win. The government has access to incredible levels of technology and organization that you do not have access to, that none of us have access to. We don't have the resources. Realistically, we do not. Right, to fight
Us
against the government
individually,
on a
yes, but
military
us
perspective.
united,
The way that we
yeah.
could genuinely fight against a tyrannical government is by utilizing democracy, protest our positions and opinions. That is the way we convince people, right, to be able to be on our side and to be able to change governmental structures within our system.
You're saying
Because the
having
U.S.
guns
government's
will-
so strong. Like, I don't think you understand the type of technology and military capacity of the government that we would be trying to fight against.
I don't think you
It's a death
understand though
sentence to
how
fight against the U.S.
powerful
government.
the American people are and how much willpower we do have if they truly became tyrannical. I truly think you underestimate the American population. Like because you also got to think a lot of
I
people
think you underestimate technology.
no, because to say we wouldn't
You don't
have
have
drones either
drones.
is insane.
You don't
But
ha- you
no,
don't
'cause
you do, you do
the
not have
kamikaze
drones.
style that are being
You don't
used
have
in
nukes.
they wouldn't use nukes. That's delusional. They would blow up their land and then they wouldn't get anything out of it. To say they would use nukes is delusional. No offense.
I'm just saying
Because they'll
that.
destroy their own stuff and their own money and their own economy.
Wait, we're
They would
talking.
not use
Wait,
nukes.
dude. So then they wouldn't shoot any of their own people.
No, because they would want it to be as precise as possible, and shooting and drone strikes would probably be what they would do, but not nuclear because that'd blow
Drone
up the whole
strikes.
city.
The point that we're just addressing is that anything they could do. It's all within their own field. We don't have.
Yeah,
that.
but we have to be realistic and look what they would actually do.
Do
They
you
would
have
never.
do you have military grade drones?
Military grade is extremely vague. Are we talking
we
like
would
those
all
huge
get
20 feet
destroyed.
long?
We'd all
Are we-
get destroyed by some Call of Duty kid in some military base where we don't know where they are. They would f us all up with a drone. All
Then
they'd have to do
why?
is sit there.
Which drones are you talking about? Are you talking about the kamikaze style, or are you talking about like the huge ones that are 20 feet above that you never see? Because there it is.
Any of the drones they have.
No, because you can see right now in the Ukraine-Russia war, a lot of people on ATVs are shooting them down with shotguns. I have plenty of shotguns. I'm quite good with a shotgun, I feel like. And not just me individually, but people are very good and people would be trained. They'd be able to shoot down those kamikaze-style drones. Well, that is a real strategy used in the Ukraine-Russia war. Are you going to deny that? They shoot them down with shotguns?
While you try to shoot it down with a shotgun, close quarters. Good luck. You'll get drone striked.
So
you want to play duck hunt? Jesus Christ, bro.
I mean, I just what?
Dude, he's like, dude, we'll be able to fight against all of the drones. You take out one drone, it would take how many people to do that? We're so
One
dude.
person.
This
Okay,
not
and I guess
GTA,
this
it's
isn't
not
getting
duck
anywhere
hunt.
because I guess that's just where we have differences. I think there is a lot of power in the people,
Okay,
and
I get you, but like the power in the people lies within our voices and our opinions and the pressure
yes,
that we
that
can
too.
put on our
Obviously.
politicians. That's where the power of us lies in. And I think that's what makes the most sense in the modern era against the US military. Now, for other militaries or other governments, the conditions for violent revolution might be different. You know what I'm saying? Right. But like that just doesn't exist in the United States, and it's not reasonable by any means.
Okay. So I guess we just have different opinions there. So I guess this was a good conversation. I got to see your.
Hold up, I want to hear.
No, I just wanted to chime in just for 1 second, only because I think I hear this a lot, especially where I grew up. So Parker knows where I grew up, right? And this was the common thing, like, oh, I need to own 50 guns because in case the government comes and gets me or something, I need to, be. But what you're not understanding also is that one, you're assuming that every single citizen will be against the government. That's never how these things play out. There will be a substantial amount of citizens who will actually agree with the government and who are willing to take the government's side and who will then go against their fellow citizens. That's how it works. And every single time when we have a big government that is going against citizens, there's either a substantial minority or in some cases a full-out majority who say, well, no, the government is not actually being tyrannical. Who's being tyrannical? All those citizens who are actually trying to overthrow the government. So you're assuming that all 300 million people will all of a sudden just rise up. That's not how it like ever plays out. It just never plays out that way because the very people who you say should own guns will likely also side with the government.
And I guess that is a realistic scenario where most of the people in America don't. But to say it would be crazy that 250, obviously not all 300 million are, but to say it's crazy that 250 million wouldn't go into support of the group that is trying to overthrow the government if it became tyrannical also is wrong too. The country has united before, and I believe it could unite again against a evil threat.
But what is evil is entirely subjective based on the
Exactly.
person.
And
Like we had a whole civil war for the fact that millions and millions and millions of people thought it was okay to own other people, and we devolved because we couldn't agree on that fact. And that would exactly happen again. For example, just hypothetically, right? This is purely hypothetical. Let's say Donald Trump decided in a few hours that he's going to say that the Constitution no longer applies, and that if you disagree with him, he's going to come and like summarily just take you away, right? Let's say he says that, right? Do you think all of his supporters are going to be like, you know what? Now he's tyrannical, I'm going to rise up against him? Or would a substantial a group of those people who also have the guns are going to be like, you know what? Maybe he makes a good case. Maybe we should detain people like Parker and everything because he has liberal opinion that he's against Donald Trump, who I see as a good guy, right? That's the problem here, is you're assuming that the very people who will actually rise up will be on the side of justice, when throughout history that's actually not been the case.
That's a good
Which
point
is
as
why
well.
I would argue that this whole rhetoric assumes that we will all see what real tyranny is. That is just entirely subjective, because I see tyranny in Russia, but yet Parker knows well that we have people who come up here daily who say that what's happening in Russia is good, that it should continue to happen, that Vladimir Putin is a good guy and everything. That's that type of subjectivity that is inherent in this, which is why I think you shouldn't use the whole like, yeah, we should have the Second Amendment to like, a rise up or anything.
So I just don't get how that completely counteracts my claim. Because yeah, obviously, if Trump became this awful dictator, and I know Parker's gonna say he already is.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have the current authority as a dictator, but he wants to. He definitely
If
wants
Trump
to.
did become tyrannical and this awful, huge dictator, there would be a lot of Republicans that still support him, and I think that is a huge problem in the Republican Party. It almost has a cult-like following, not majority, but I do think there's a percentage that is like that. But I do think most of the Republicans would turn on him. Obviously, there'd still be that few branch, but you wouldn't need all of the population to fight the government. You would just need a majority, I think, more than majority, probably around a 70%.
You know what,
75.
Kyle? I got a point for you. You care about the Constitution so much. Why the did you vote for a guy that literally said he wants to terminate all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution? Please explain that one to me, bro.
In the beginning of our conversation, I did say, can we stay on the Second Amendment, because it is the topic I'm the most educated
The
on.
point that I would
So-
say is that like the Second Amendment is within the Constitution, and if he wants to terminate all rules and regulations and articles, even those found in the Constitution, that includes the Second Amendment. So when he's undermining that because he thinks that he won the election with no sufficient evidence, that's undermining your Second Amendment.
And like I said, I'm just not as educated on that other stuff. Second Amendment affects me personally, so that's the topic I am most educated on. So I don't want to misrepresent the Republican Party and the Republican side with this argument. So, if you don't mind, I would like to stay on the Second Amendment.
Okay, then what about Donald Trump saying, for example, let's take guns first and have due process second?
Good question. I was going to ask that.
I'm not familiar with that quote, but if you're going to try to act like Republicans are worse for the Second Amendment, then
That's not my no. I didn't make that claim. We were talking about Donald Trump.
But
Donald Trump has for a long time not been a friend of the Second Amendment. He has said things that if any Democratic president had said those very things, you would be very, very concerned, right? Like very concerned. If a Democrat had said, let's take guns first and have due process second, you guys would be entirely up in arms about it. But yet when Donald Trump says it, it's, well, it's a joke, or he didn't really mean it, or blah, 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 which is exactly that kind of tyrannical rhetoric that you get when people try to excuse things that lead to that kind of authoritarianism.
I can list stuff that Democrats have done that I believe is in complete violation too, and not I just said have literally done. So we can act like Trump's rhetoric is bad, which it is, or we can actually look at stuff the Democrats have literally done, like the state I live in, Washington. You cannot own semi-automatic rifles. I'm saying how Democratic leaders typically restrict it way more than Republicans. Even if Trump says he's going to do these things, he never actually does really in terms of restricting the Second Amendment when Democratic leaders literally do. It's worse.
Yeah, because we stand on our actions. Like when we say stuff, we like mean it, and we want to. And Democrats by and large care more about public policy.
So
when we say we want to actually make it happen.
But your original point was, or not your original, but the point you made a little bit ago was Trump restricts the Second Amendment more. I'm showing you things that
I said his rhetoric shows that he would want to, and I bet you that if he could, he probably would. Because
I don't think
in
so.
his heart, I think he's not a particular fan of, nor does he know about the long history of the Second Amendment. I don't think he really cares.
I think he does care. So, and I guess that's not something we can't argue on because it's just things and there's no evidence behind it, really. So I don't think that's a topic.
I just use what he says, like the fact that he has said things that are anti-Second Amendment, and the fact that
I look
he
at what
was
he
the only
has
president
done,
in the last like
even though
decade
he
and a
has
half
banned bump
to
stocks.
propose like an anti-gun measure and stuff. Like Joe Biden didn't do that. Obama didn't do that. I mean, it's been Trump who was the one who actually did something about it, and good for him. Like, you know what? I actually did agree with him on that.